1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to Slooh, where there's no better place to learn to explore space together. Wow. Hopefully now you're listening over at slooh.com, because I'm going to be guiding you around the site during the live cast. And you'll also be able to switch between a few of our live feeds if you watch the live cast in what we call the situation room. So I'll just show you where that is actually. Let's take a quick look. This is going to be a fairly relaxed show today, so yeah, let's just sit back and chill. So when you're on the Slooh website, all you've got to do is go to live cast up to, let's make just sure you can see this, yes, and up to space situation room. And there you can see that you can watch the fabulous live view, but you can also switch between some of our great views today that we've got, including the Canary Islands skies. There's the sun. We're going to talk about the sun quite a lot today, and my favorite feed today, which is this one. This is our panorama, our live panorama, and I've got an animation of this, a live animation of it. It's really, really cool. So wait until we see that. But anyway, so what else are we doing today? Now, yeah, it's our Still Sun Solstice Stories live cast, and in around 26 minutes time, so it's actually 28 minutes past the hour, it's going to be the precise moment of the December solstice, marking the start of astronomical winter in the Northern Hemisphere and the start of astronomical summer in the Southern Hemisphere. And you know, you'll quite often hear about this solstice, the December solstice, being called the Winter Solstice, and I always take objection to that on behalf of all of those people who live down in the Southern Hemisphere. You know, it's the start of their summer, so they're welcoming that in. Now, we're going to talk about what actually occurs at the solstice, and just as our ancestors kind of told stories around a fire to ease the long, dark nights of winter, we'll be sharing some of the solstice stories and illumination posts from the Slooh website as well. And throughout the live cast, we are going to have some terrific live streams. And I'll tell you, they are pretty terrific today from Slooh's flagship observatory in the Canary Islands. That's at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands, and it's home to some of the world's largest telescopes. In fact, the largest optical telescope is on the neighbouring island of La Palma, the Grand Tecan telescope. Loads of people think, oh, largest telescope in the world is in Hawaii or Chile or somewhere like that, but no, it's virtually next door, on the next door island to the Slooh robotic telescopes that members get to control every night. So our telescopes are in good company. And in fact, until a couple of years ago, the largest solar telescope in the world was based literally 300 yards away from the Slooh domes on top of the island of Tenerife. Now, by the way, if you're not already a member, please sign up today. No better time to do it. Christmas hole's coming up. Loads to do on the Slooh website. So please sign up. We really need your help to support our mission, to teach the world to explore space in our little commercial-free sanctuary. And if you're a parent, teacher, professor, please check out our new classroom and college astrolab programs. Now, back to our feeds. We've already been spoiled for choice with some magical views of the sunrise at Slooh's Canary Islands Observatory this morning. So let's just take a little look at those. Do forgive me because I'm doing this myself today. Let's take a look. Right, so here it comes. This is Pico del Teide from the Observatory Residencia. So when I'm at the observatory, I stay in the building called the Residencia, and this special camera looks out over Pico del Teide, which is actually just a tiny volcanic cone off to the left of an enormous caldera that's been used in all sorts of films, from Star Wars to Fast and Furious. But that's what greets us every morning as the nighttime astronomers go back to the residence to sleep during the daylight hours. But we've got an even better one from this morning, and I was watching this live. I was up last night and we were really enjoying this. Take a look at this. Now this is sunrise over the Canary Islands Observatory, and it was magical. And one thing that some people might notice, if you've seen this view before from this camera, the sun is quite far over on the right, and that's towards the south, and that's exactly what solstice is marking. The sun for the Northern Hemisphere is further south than at any other time. If you look at that as it comes up, and that's actually over the neighbouring island of Gran Canaria, yet another enormous volcano. So anyway, that was what we were spoilt to this morning, but today we are going to be watching sunset as well. Now this is a live panorama view over the entire observatory, and there you can see some of the domes housing the enormous telescopes there, just where Slooh's telescopes are as well. And we were watching missions last night. We were watching the live views from the telescopes last night. My goodness, there were some really, really beautiful sights with no moon to spoil the view. Now, as I said, we've got the actual moment of solstice occurs at 28 minutes past the hour, but we're going to carry on broadcasting all the way through until we might just kind of take some little breaks for music and stuff like that. But we're going to watch the sight that I usually enjoy when I'm at the observatory in the Canary Islands. We're going to watch the sun as it sets behind Pico del Teide, that 12,000 foot high volcano. So that's going to be quite a cool view that we've got coming up. Now let's take a look at some of the other feeds then. So we've also got, this is regular viewers will know that this is our special low light camera, and we usually use this for things like monitoring the sky conditions over the observatories and also spotting meteors and stuff like that. So you can see here that it's got what's called a fisheye lens, which is a 180-degree field of view. So north is at the top, east is to the left, west is to the right, south is to the bottom. And as you can see there, the sun is so low, and I've got a really special post that we put in Illuminations the other day, which compares the sun's position at the solstices, the 2 solstices, and the 2 equinoxes. And it really illustrates beautifully the tilt of the Earth. We're going to go into that a little bit more a bit later on, but there you go. There is the sun. Now you might be wondering, what's that enormous spike coming out? No, that's not our sun flaring out or anything like that. It's just the sun is so bright for this incredibly sensitive little camera that all of the electrons that build up on the little CCD chip kind of spill out all along the column, and that's what we get. We get those big spikes coming off it. So, but we're going to be monitoring that as well as the sun slowly starts to set. What else have we got? Oh, we can keep an eye as well on the dome cam. Now here we're going to see the sun will come into view, and there you can see the 3 domes that house the Slooh telescopes that Slooh members use every single night. The one in the middle, that's our Canary 1 dome, and that houses our premium, our flagship. It's a glorious, glorious telescope. It's got a 0.5 meter diameter mirror, and anyone who's into astronomy in the slightest way will know the term aperture fever. It's when you start buying telescopes yourself and this fever takes over you, that you've got to have a bigger and bigger and bigger aperture telescope. And I tell you, a 0.5 meter telescope is enormous. It is out of reach of all but the very richest amateur astronomers. But as a Slooh member, you get to control that telescope that's inside that dome every single night. It's so cool, and the images, the image stream that it produces, absolutely wonderful. Anyway, that's the middle dome. On the right-hand dome, by the way, we're going to watch these open up a little bit later, which would be cool, and we'll see the telescopes kind of sticking out the top. You can actually park a car inside those domes. It's difficult to get any kind of sense of scale there, isn't it, from that image? But you can actually park a car in there. But that right-hand dome, that's our Canary 2 dome, and that houses a telescope very, very similar to our Canary 1 telescope, just as we start to see the sun's just starting to peek in to this particular image stream. And it's really, really good at capturing faint galaxies and nebulae and star clusters. It's also got a little telescope piggybacked on top of that, which takes some terrific views of the moon. And don't forget, at the moment, if you're going to enjoy a sunset wherever you are tonight, a solstice sunset, then keep your eyes open for an incredibly thin moon, crescent moon, just after sunset to the west. It looks glorious. I just caught a little bit of an incredibly young one last month, so that was quite good. So anyway, that's our Canary 2 dome. Now in Canary 3, which is, we can only see a little bit of the dome in the left-hand corner of this image stream, that houses 3 telescopes. We've got our Canary 3 Deep Sky Telescope. That's a very special kind of telescope that's superb at imaging incredibly large objects like the Andromeda Galaxy. And members get to control that. We've also got our Canary 4 Solar System Telescope, and that's really good for imaging planets, real close-ups of the moon. But none of these telescopes I'm talking about can image the sun. And we've got a live stream coming, and you can see here, well, the domes are closed, so how on earth can we be getting our best image stream for our entire solstice show? Well, it's coming direct from, let's have a look. This is coming from what we call our Canary 5 Slooh Solar Telescope. Now, this is a live video feed, and this is taken through an incredibly special camera and telescope. It's called a hydrogen alpha telescope, which means that we're only seeing the sunlight that's emitted by excited hydrogen atoms. And that's why we can get to see all of these peculiar solar features. Now you can see those little dark spots on there. Those are not actually sunspots. If you look closely, they're not as dense as a sunspot would be. These are actually filaments. They're huge streams of plasma excited ionized gas that are being sculpted through the sun's magnetic field lines as they burst through and loop out of the solar surface as we see it, out of the photosphere and chromosphere. But just to the left there, you can see that little pale area. And it's looking a little bit fuzzy at the moment because we have got some cloud, if you notice that in the all-sky camera view. But that little pale area to the left, that's an active region. Now, we've been watching that over the last few days slowly develop as the sun rotated into view. So from this view, the sun is rotating from left to right. So the features on the left are slowly going over to the right. And we've been watching this develop. And quite often, an active region like that is what you'll start to see sunspots. You'll see sunspots developing there. And I got a sneaking suspicion, I'm watching this on a very big screen at the moment, and I got a sneaking suspicion we can see a darker area. The feed might get a little bit clearer if these clouds disappear, but that little dark region just to the right of the light patch, well, that looks to me like a sunspot. And if you look at the left of the active region, that pale area, there's another little dark area. And don't forget that most of these features that you see on the sun, they're magnetic, and a lot of them are bipolar. So just like that experiment that you did in physics class with a bar magnet and iron filings, that's exactly what some of these features start to look like on the sun. And quite often you'll get a binary, you'll see a pair of sunspots together, and those mark where a huge loop of the magnetic field is bursting free of the sun, and that's what kind of sucks up all of this excited plasma and it starts sculpting. And we watch this change over a matter of minutes and hours in this telescope. I'll tell you what, let's just do a little search and we'll see whether or not we can. I'm just going to control this telescope. So normally this one just sits there and delivers the feed all the time, but I'm just going to move it a little bit. So, and in fact, if you're watching this, it's best if you watch this in, let me see, it's best if you watch this in the situation room. So if you go to the situation room or the telescope, so actually let me just screen share this if you're not watching, do excuse me. So here's the Slooh website. Go along and watch this as a live stream. Go up to telescopes and down to Canary 5, which is the solar telescope. And there you'll watch this lovely live feed, because what we're going to do is we're going to take a look further down the sun. We're going to move the telescope and see if there are any more features down the bottom. So let's take a look. Let's get over to the right, get it centered up nicely. And let's go. So we've got those dark filaments at the top. We've got that bright active region, and there's the large filament. So this was terrific. We actually saw this filament, that dark line, that dark stream of material, as a prominence, because a prominence and a filament are both the same phenomena. But when that arc of gas, imagine that is not just a line that's flat on the sun. This is actually arcing over the surface of the sun. When you see it, when it's rotating into view on the edge of the sun, on the solar limb, then that's where you see it as a prominence. But it's exactly the same phenomena. So let's just take a look a little bit further. The audio and what you see in the visual might kind of change, be a little bit out of step for this, but let's just check to make sure that we're not missing any other solar features that have popped up during the day. Another couple of filaments over on the right hand side there, but otherwise, no, I think we're in the right place to be watching the solstice, which is now in about 16 minutes time or thereabouts. So let's recenter up the telescope and have that set up nicely. And then I can leave that. So don't forget, tell us what you're up to on solstice. Where are we today? In Europe, it's any time between kind of 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. local time for everybody in Western Europe. I know in the States it's something like 11:30 or something like that over there. So, you know, you're probably enjoying a morning coffee, I would hope, over there. Actually, we're going to talk about something else, which is quite amusing that you can do for solstice when you get home tonight, and I'll give you a shopping list so you can do that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So anyway, let's take a recap. Now, I think we should chill for 10 minutes or so, and we'll enjoy the live views with a little music as well, and when we return we'll talk a little bit more about what the solstice is and that tradition that I might just start tonight. It's called wassailing. And Slooh storyteller Helen Avery made a post about that in Slooh's Illumination. So we'll take a look at that afterwards. But don't go anywhere, because let's celebrate the moment of solstice together at 28 minutes past. Now, make sure you're watching at Slooh. Make sure that you go off to the telescopes page. Actually, no, sorry, go to the live cast and go to the space situation room, and you can switch between some of the live views. So you can switch between those live telescope views from the solar telescope. You can keep an eye on the all sky camera. Sun is going down even further. I mean, that's why, you know, this is the worst time of year actually to observe the sun, because it's so low in the sky in the Northern Hemisphere. But also keep an eye on our lovely observatory panorama today, which is actually one of my favorite captures, because we're going to be watching this as the sun sets behind Mount Teide a little bit later on. So let's chill for a bit and listen to some music and enjoy some of these feeds. And hello, welcome back. This is Slooh, where there's no better place to learn, to explore space, and we do it together here with the Slooh community. Now, hopefully you're listening over at slooh.com, because we're going to be going through some of the brilliant content around the solstice, about the solstice there during the live cast. And why we're here today? Well, it's the still sun, it's solstice stories, and we're going to tell a few of those a bit later. But we have only got about a minute until the moment of solstice. And unlike some astronomical phenomena, solstice occurs at the same time for everybody around the planet. But what does it really mean? Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. But look, we are on a countdown now. In fact, there's probably about 15 seconds left. So let me be the very first to say welcome to Northern Hemisphere winter and Southern Hemisphere summer. Woohoo! It's solstice. So what does all that mean? And summer, winter? Well, I don't know. You may be a little bit confused about this yourself. Is it the start of winter? Well, it really depends on whether or not you're an astronomer or a meteorologist. If you're an astronomer, the moment of solstice, just now, a few seconds ago, marks the start of what is called astronomical winter. But if you're a weather person, a meteorologist, winter started at the beginning of December. So what's the difference between meteorological winter and astronomical winter? Well, hey, look, I'm just going to take another look at the live views that we got here, because we've got to take... Ooh, now, I'm going to tell you about start of winter in a second. I just wanted to show you something here, because you may have seen it during our little break, because this is quite cool, because we've got one camera feed at the moment, which is building this live animation as we go. So we're able to see, let me just switch the other one off, there we go. As the afternoon wears on, it's going to be another half hour, something like that, maybe an hour actually. We're going to watch the sun set behind Pico del Teide. So this will continue building, adding on new image streams, and I'll tell you, it's a glorious sight. When you stay there, when you stay at the observatory at the Institute of Astrophysics at the Canary Islands, your bedroom looks out with this exact scene. And it's spectacular, because you not only see the sun set behind Pico del Teide, but tonight they'll see the incredibly thin, only few day old crescent moon also setting behind Mount Teide. And you get to see the planets as well setting behind there. It's a magical sight, it really is. I wish everybody could experience that. So anyway, let's take another look back at our feeds. What have we got? Yeah, this is still looking good. So this is our panorama shot. This is showing all of the observatories that are at the Institute of Astrophysics at the Canary Islands. Don't forget, this is 8,000 feet up on a volcano, just off the west coast of Africa. And the reason why professionals and Slooh puts their telescopes there is because of what's called the astronomical seeing. And it's exactly the same as Hawaii. It's why Hawaii is such a good place as well to have telescopes. If you imagine, all of the air mass, the atmosphere, is coming from the southwest as far as Canary Islands are concerned, and it's blowing over the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the Atlantic Ocean, yeah, okay, it gets a bit choppy every now and again, but basically it's smooth. So the air mass that passes across an ocean is usually quite still and stable. And when you see a star twinkle, that's for astronomers, that's the last thing you want to see, because when a star twinkles, all it is the atmosphere kind of bubbling and being turbulent and spoiling the view. So what happens in these kind of islands? You have this incredibly stable mass of air that comes in and sweeps up over the observatory. And when you're there on good nights, the stars don't twinkle at all. It's the most eerie feeling there. It just, you know that something's very different. And half the time as well, you're looking down on the top of the clouds as well, which is quite cool. But anyway, what we were talking about was, is today the start of winter? Because it's never really made sense to me. We say that today is the longest night, the shortest day. Well, wouldn't that be midwinter? But no, it's the start of winter. But it's only the start of winter for astronomers. So what is the difference? Well, meteorological winter, so what the weather guys do, is the 3-month period that runs from December 1st to the end of February. It's the coldest 3-month period of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. But astronomical winter is what we refer to when we talk about the winter season. And this is based on when the sun reaches the most southern point of the globe, the Tropic of Capricorn. Now, if you're located right on the Tropic of Capricorn at 12 noon on the first day of astronomical winter today, the sun is going to be directly overhead. And what this really means is, for us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're kind of tilted away from the sun, because Earth, don't forget, isn't kind of straight up. Its axis is tilted at 23.5 degrees, which means that when we're tilted during the summer towards the sun in the Northern Hemisphere, it's nice and hot. We get loads of sunshine. The sun's up for a very long day. We don't even get proper darkness in some places in the north. But during the winter, during the December solstice, this is when that tilt is the furthest away it can be from the sun, which means that the sun remains very low, and it's to the south as well. It's another peculiar phenomena that we might talk about a little bit later, because if you've got clear skies this evening as the sun's setting, so if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's going to be kind of about 5 o'clock, roughly around there, depending on where you are, local time, 5 p.m. If you get a really clear western horizon to see the actual disk of the sun as it's setting, you might notice something. You might not notice it, but if you're tuned into this stuff, you might realize, well, there's something a bit different about this. And it's actually, today marks the day when you get the longest sunsets. That's the period of time between the very first moment the sun's disk touches the horizon to when it finally disappears. And we'll talk about why that is a little bit later. But I wanted to tell you about this really, it's a really fun, a fun new tradition that I'm going to start here in the Cox household for solstice. Now, anybody who is familiar with Slooh's website will know that we've got tons of content about just about every subject related to space. And we were hoping that Helen Avery, Slooh's storyteller, was going to be doing this show actually, because she'd be best suited for it, because it's more kind of a spiritual type event. I mean, I am just down the road actually from the wonderful prehistoric site of Stonehenge in the southwest of England, and there'll be loads of druids down there right now celebrating solstice, because although this marks the beginning of winter, it also marks the longest night, the shortest day. So from now on, the days are going to start getting longer for us in the Northern Hemisphere. So this is probably more celebrated by so many cultures than the summer solstice. But anyway, let's get on to this tradition that I want to start here in the Cox household. We have even got, right, a recipe for you here. And this is posted by Helen, and actually it is a tradition that comes from my part of the world, here in the southwest of England. Wassailing for the winter solstice. I'm going to read this to you just in case you are just listening elsewhere on the website. And Helen says, if you're celebrating the winter solstice this year, you may want to add the ancient tradition of wassailing to your festivities. In the centuries past, in England, particularly in the southwest, wassailers went from door to door, singing and drinking to the health of their neighbours. They typically carried a bowl of winter punch and offered a sup in exchange for gifts. Well, this is sounding good to me. Is it not sounding good to you? Sounds like a good tradition. Now, in the Victorian era, carolling was added to the mix. Oh, no, come on, let's not spoil things with Christmas. Not quite yet. We've got another few days for that. And those people were singing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" on your street at 4 a.m. They're not drunken revellers headed back from the office Christmas party. They're wassailers, Helen's saying. Well, maybe. I suspect they're drunken partygoers. But wassailing, Helen goes on to say in this article in Illuminations, but wassailing is steeped in wonderful pagan tradition. It comes from fertility rites, where in the middle of winter, villagers would travel through their fields and orchards, singing and shouting to drive away any spirits that might inhibit the growth of future crops, particularly orchard crops. And as part of their ritual, they'd pour wine or cider on the ground to encourage a good harvest the next year. Wow, I'm not sure I could do that bit. Some were said to do this for the solstice and some on 12th night. Either way, it seems like a fun thing to do when it's cold and dark out. This is what Helen's saying. So wassailing, and she's even got here a traditional recipe for a wassail, which is the name of the punch. And I haven't had a look at this, so let's have a look. Yeah, we're turning Slooh into a cooking show for the first time. That's cool. Simmer the following for about 30 minutes. I like that idea already. It sounds like one of those kind of all-in-one kind of recipes. Just stuff everything into a saucepan and let it go. So simmer for approximately 30 minutes to an hour. 1 gallon of apple cider. Okay, I'm with you. 2 cups of orange juice. That's even better because that will count as what, 2 or 3 of your 5 a day. 1 cup of lemon juice. Wow, that's a lot of lemon juice. Oh, here you go. To offset that, we got 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 cinnamon sticks. Not that keen on cinnamon, but you know, we'll put up with it. Probably goes quite nicely with the apple cider. 1 teaspoon of cloves pressed into an orange. Oh, those are the little things, aren't they, that the Tudors took around with them too. The ladies carried an orange around with cloves stuck into it. I remember doing that as a child, and it was to kind of keep away the horrible smells of the streets of Tudor England. 1 teaspoon of nutmeg and 1/2 cup of brandy, and that's optional. Now, I'm liking the sound of this, and I'm just kind of going through in my head. I think I've got all of the ingredients for that. So Cox is going to go wassailing later. Now, Helen goes on to say in this article, an interesting fact is that toasted bread used to be put in the punch, which is why we say, I'll toast your health. Really? I never knew. Did you know that? Did you know that? Indeed, wassail comes from wassail, meaning, that's probably weishael then, isn't it? Meaning good health. Hence, the first stanza of the traditional carol, the Gloucestershire wassail, dating back to the Middle Ages, says, wassail, wassail, all over the town. Our toast, it is white, and our ale, it is brown. Our bowl, it is made of the white maple tree, with the wassailing bowl, we'll drink unto thee. What a lovely, lovely thing. I love this post. Thank you very much, Helen, for sharing that with us, because I can never come up with stuff like that. So Helen was meant to be coming on to do all this stuff. But anyway, if you're on the Slooh website, take a look around, because whenever you're looking at one illuminations post, in the right hand side over here, you'll see that we always link associated content. So we'll have another look at some of the other illumination articles in there. But for now, why don't we take another short break? Actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. When we come back, we're going to take a short break. We'll go back to the live feeds. I'll make sure that the telescopes are all pointing in the right places. And we'll have a little bit of music. And then I know that Karen Stevens, who is the editor of our first book, Slooh's first book, The Saturn Above, I know that she's put some poetry on here. So I'm not usually known for a bit of poetry, but hey, listen, the wassailing has got me in the mood. So maybe we'll read a bit of Karen's poetry that she's dug out to do with solstice. But for now, let's take a little break. I'll go off, check the feeds and stuff like that. So don't go anywhere. Bye. Hello and welcome back to Slooh, where there's no better place to learn to explore space. And today we are celebrating December solstice, the start of astronomical winter in the Northern Hemisphere and astronomical summer for everybody who's down in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, I said a little earlier that we've got some great articles and illuminations on Slooh's website. So we're just going to take a little look at one of those right now. Because Karen Stevens, the editor of Slooh's book, The Saturn Above It, you could probably still get a copy of that actually for Christmas. She's posted some poetry here, which is associated, she calls them the 4 winter poems for the solstice. So don't forget to access any of this. You go to Illuminations and you can hop down here to all of the links here. But we're here. And I looked at these a little bit earlier, and this is my favorite because it's kind of the simplest. And it's by Robert Frost. I'm afraid I'm an absolute Philistine when it comes to poetry, but I like what I listen to. So anyway, this is Robert Frost, and it's called Dust of Snow. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood, and saved some part of a day I had rued. That is, it's short, it's sweet, it's such a beautiful little picture invoking bit of poetry. Now, Karen has got some more down here as well. So please read those at your leisure. And don't forget, when you're looking at any one article in Illuminations, over on the right-hand side, it tells you the other things that are associated with it. And in fact, I've got another one here that I promised to share with you at the beginning of this show. Now, we've seen the all-sky live views. Let's just take a look at our live all-sky camera view. And there it is. This camera operates 24-hour day and night, and it shows us the night sky and day sky over this Slooh Observatory domes, where the telescopes are housed that Slooh members get to control every night. And here we can see in this live stream, the big white thing off to the right is the sun. Don't worry about the big kind of spikes coming off it. That's called blooming, where just the sun is so bright it's doing something to the sensor, the camera chip. But I got to thinking, because when I was looking at this the other day and preparing for the show, I was thinking, well, yeah, the sun in this view looks incredibly low. So in this particular view, north is up, south is to the bottom, west is right, east is left. And there we can see the sun. Now, although it's setting, we can see that it's low. And if anyone looked at this earlier on in the day, it actually only got it was still low, even at noon, when it passed the meridian, where it was highest in the sky, but it was still really quite low. So anyway, I got to thinking about this the other day and thinking, well, I wonder if I can search back through some of those all-sky images, and I put them together to actually see what the difference is. Now, hopefully you can see this quite well. And what this image shows is, on the left-hand side, you've got, so this is stepping through the year, we've got March equinox there. And that's when, the sun is, roughly overhead. You can see where it is. Then June solstice, it gets the highest that it gets in the entire sky. That's marking the beginning, don't forget, of Northern Hemisphere summer, astronomical summer. And then you've got the equinox again, the September equinox, and you can see it's in exactly the same position as March. So this is where the Earth kind of appears, directly facing the sun, so everywhere's getting an equal amount of night and day. It's not quite the same, but we've gone over that in some of our equinox shows. But there you can see December solstice today. At its highest, that's where the sun was. And you can see just how much lower it is in the winter versus in June, when it was so high in the sky, marking the beginning of summer. And this is why the solstice is actually a little bit more important in a lot of cultures than summer solstice is. And it's because, this is marking, the longest night, the shortest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. And the celebrations were, it's over. The sun's going to start climbing higher in the sky. The days are going to start getting longer. And that was cause of great celebrations. So that's why, just down the road from me, at the prehistoric Stonehenge, I think it was 3000 BC or something like that, they were gathering down there at winter solstice, celebrating that the sun was going to come back, that life was going to start coming back to their fields, to the trees and everything else. That's why it's such a cause for celebration in so many cultures around the world, from India to South America to my little part of the world, to North American Indians as well. They celebrated winter solstice because it was going to be the end of the snows. The snows were going to start getting a little bit better. Anyway, let's take another look. In fact, I'm just going to catch up with myself a little bit, and I hope you're still enjoying those live views. In fact, we ought to hop over there and just take a sneaking look, because the sun is starting to get quite low here. So what you need to do is shout out to me if you start seeing a big shadow crossing the sun in our Canary 5 Slooh Solar Telescope, because that's it setting behind the local horizon, and we're going to watch it set as well, don't forget, behind Mount Teide, the big volcano. So anyway, actually there was a question from Robert, if I can find it. Robert, where did you ask that question? Over in, this is where Slooh members hang out, over in community and up to discussions. I would take a look, and I noticed just during that last little break that Robert asked a question. Robert V asked a question. Are there any plans to allow users the ability to further control the solar telescope, i.e. zoom in and pan out, focus on a specific region? Well, the short answer is no, Robert, and it has more to do with the type of telescope that it is. Most telescopes, you can't zoom in optically, and you certainly can't do that on this telescope, which has a fixed focal length. It sits there with its high frame rate video camera on the back of it, capturing video. And the only way you can zoom in on something like that is if you zoom in digitally. So what you can do is you can certainly zoom in digitally if you snap a picture. And don't forget, folks, when you're watching the live telescopes, you can, this is for the nighttime telescopes as well, just below the live feed, you see this little camera button, just click that and you'll see, bing, it's just snapped an image from the live stream at the moment. And that's my image that I've just snapped, and that goes to your safe little repository over here in My Pictures, where everything's stored safely. And we can go in here and take a look. You can see a few here that I've snapped today, actually, and you can see the difference between yesterday and today, the conditions. We've got these light clouds. But anyway, if you wanted, Robert, to manipulate this image in any way, you'd be far better off downloading it from My Pictures and cropping and zooming in on the regions that you want to do digitally. But it's not possible to do that. And what we do when we're looking at the live feed every day, when we're controlling the live feed from the solar telescope, is we scan over the entire surface of the sun to make sure that we are focusing on the best features. And if you were here at the beginning of the show, then we can do it again now. I'm just going to move the telescope. There might be a little bit of delay before you see this. But we actually scan over the entire sun, and we make sure that we're always showing the best possible features. And some days you'll see us tune it so that the whole disk of the sun is white. It's almost overexposed. But we do that sometimes to make sure that we can capture the faint prominences which are on the limb of the sun. So anyway, there's always be assured that we're always focusing on the best possible features on the Slooh Solar Telescope. And actually here today, what we've been looking at is those dark dots there, and the dark line you can see there, those are solar filaments. These are huge streams of gas, plasma actually, excited plasma streaming up from the surface of the sun. But also we can see that little white patch to the left. Now that's an active region. That's where lots of stuff's going on the sun. And you can see the two spots at the top. I think those are filaments rather than sunspots. We'll keep an eye on that over the next couple of days. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on that active region as well, which is I think that's grown actually since we started this show. And we've got another filament just coming in on the left as well to celebrate solstice. How cool is this? Looking at live image streams in this very highly specialized telescope. Actually, you can see the telescope in the top right hand. We have a little kind of video monitor inside the dome, and it's looking at the Slooh Solar Telescope, looking out of the dome at our sun on the day of solstice. Solstice now was half an hour ago. We've already had half an hour of winter. It's probably time to put another log on the fire. Now, don't go anywhere, Coles. We are going, actually, let's just take another look back at our panorama. Let's see just how close we're getting to sunset. It's getting there, it's getting there. Here we go. And there it is. You can see it heading off down to Pico del Tedi, and that's where it's going to set behind that enormous volcano. Now, we're going to take another short little break. We'll chill, we'll enjoy some of these. We're going to look at some more illumination posts from Karen Stevens and Helen Avery when we come back. But as soon as we come back, we'll take a look at the updated time-lapse animation from one of our special feeds today, and we'll see the sun on its path down to setting on the day of solstice. Cool, that's cool. See you in a bit. Winter Time by Robert Louis Stevenson. Late lies the wintry sun abed, a frosty, fiery, sleepy head. Blinks but an hour or two, and then a blood-red orange sets again. Before the stars have left the skies, at morning in the dark I rise, and shivering in my nakedness, by the cold candle bathe and dress. Close by the jolly fire I sit, to warm my frozen bones a bit, or with a reindeer sled explore the colder countries round the door. When to go out, my nurse doth wrap me in my comforter and cap. The cold wind burns my face and blows its frosty pepper up my nose. Black are my steps on silver sod. Thick blows my frosty breath abroad, and tree and house and hill and lake are frosted like a wedding cake. That was Winter Time by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is Slooh, and we are celebrating December solstice, the start of winter, which started nearly 40 minutes ago. And what we're doing is we're going to be watching the sun as it sets behind Slooh's Observatory in the Canary Islands, home to the telescopes that Slooh members use every night. So let's carry on and watching some of these great live streams. Winter by Walter de la Mare. And the robin flew into the air, the white mist through, and small and rare. The night frost fell into the calm and misty dell. And the dusk gathered low, and the silver moon and stars on the frozen snow drew taper bars, kindled winking fires in the hooded briars. And the sprawling bear growled deep in the sky, and Orion's hair streamed sparkling by. But the north sighed low, snow, snow, more snow. It was Winter by Walter de la Mare. We are celebrating Winter Solstice, December Solstice, Winter Solstice for those in the Northern Hemisphere, Summer Solstice for those in the Southern Hemisphere. And we were here watching the live streams from Slooh Special Telescopes at that very moment of solstice at 28 minutes past the hour. I think that was 11:28 Eastern Time. And for those of us here in the UK and Western Europe, it was 4:28. But we're staying because we want to watch the sun set, first of all, behind the Slooh Solar Telescope feed. So make sure, I'm going to take you over to the Slooh website. Hopefully that's where you're watching, because I want to show you where you can make sure you're watching the live video of that happening. Now then, go up to telescopes, come down to Canary 5, because that's the Slooh Solar Telescope, and there it is. There's the live stream. Now, sometime, I haven't timed this, but sometime over the next, my guess would be 10 minutes, we're going to see the sun start to set in the Slooh Solar Telescope. And what we'll see is it'll be darkening from the right-hand side. So keep your eyes peeled on that. And one thing that if you've been watching the Slooh Canary Islands Solar Telescope every day over the last year, if you're kind of tuned in to how long it normally takes for the sun to set, to disappear behind the local horizon, you might notice that today, the day of solstice, it takes longer than normal. And I watched this last night. It took ages in comparison to certainly a couple of months ago for the sun to totally disappear from view. And that's because here in the Northern Hemisphere, you can just see actually in that little, there's a little bit of a video in the top right hand corner. That's the dome, the inside of the dome in a little camera, and it's showing us that telescope. And you can see we've had to open the dome quite a lot because the sun is so low to the south here in the Northern Hemisphere. And because it's so low in the south, it means that as its sun starts to set, it's at far more of a flat angle against the horizon. So basically, it's kind of skimming along the horizon, and that's why it takes longer to set in December equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. Now you can take that to extremes, because elsewhere on the planet, it won't ever be setting. It will just be skimming along the horizon. But in the far north, it won't even be rising, because from our point of view here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're tilted away from the sun. But the great news about Solstice Day, December solstice, we've had the longest night of the year. We've had the shortest day of the year. Things can only get better from here. Now, while we're waiting to watch the sun starting to set, just keep your eyes peeled on that. That active region is looking pretty good, isn't it? I think we've got some good features there. That little pale area to the left that we're looking at in the live feed, make sure you watch this tomorrow and snap some images. In fact, I'm going to snap an image now of that, because I think that is definitely, oh, it is Look at that. You can see the detail in it. That is really starting to become a lot more active. And it looks to me like there could be some fledgling sunspots. You can see just over the hour that we've been broadcasting how much that's changed. And that long filament, the long dark thing on the bottom across the face of the sun, that's changed as well. It's got longer and thinner as the show's gone on. And that's why the Canary 5 Solar Telescope is actually one of my favorite ever Slooh telescopes. I know the other ones. The half-meter telescope is great at looking at things like the Horsehead Nebulae, the Andromeda Galaxy, and so many other objects in the sky. But this, seeing these minute-to-minute changes in our local star, the sun, it just captivates me. Absolutely captivates me. So keep an eye, snap a picture just by pressing that camera button down here, and do the same thing tomorrow and compare the two. And as I say, I think we're going to see that active region maybe generate a couple of sunspots tomorrow. But I just wanted to share something else to you about, I was talking about the long nights. Now, astronomers, nighttime astronomers, not solar astronomers, they love long nights. This is their favorite time of year. There's longer to be able to observe things than any other time of year. And I made a post here. This is where Slooh members hang out and discuss stuff. And I made this post here because I thought, well, okay, we've got an observatory in the Northern Hemisphere in the Canary Islands, but we've also got an observatory in Chile in the Southern Hemisphere. So it's the start of summer down there, meaning that the nights down there at the moment are short, but the nights in the Canary Islands are long. And I wondered how this affected the amount of time members have to be able to control the telescopes each night. Now, those of you who are regular to Slooh, you'll know that we split up the telescope time into 5 and 10 minute chunks. That's when each member controls the telescope. There's no limit on how many of those a single member can do, and you can watch other members doing the same thing. But I made the little calculation that today, on the day of December solstice, there are 586 mission slots every night for members to control. So you can bag any one of those nearly 600 mission slots for tonight. What will you use it for? Maybe you'll use the half-meter telescope to capture the Orion Nebulae, the Flame Nebula, the Horsehead Nebula maybe. Or maybe one of my returning favorites using the Canary 2 telescope, M51, the Whirlpool Galaxy. No galaxy collection is complete without the Whirlpool Galaxy. But maybe you want to capture one of the largest objects in the night sky at the moment, the vast, the gargantuan Andromeda Galaxy. And one of the best telescopes to do that in is using the Canary 3 Deep Sky Telescope. It has a huge field of view, so it's absolutely perfect for enormous objects like the Andromeda Galaxy. Or maybe you're a bit of a planetary fan. Maybe you want to capture the moons of Uranus or Neptune. Or maybe you want to capture Jupiter, which is just returning to the pre-dawn skies, burning brightly in the pre-dawn skies. If you're an early bird, then make sure you look to the east just before dawn and you'll see Jupiter burning brightly. But if you want to capture that using the Slooh telescopes, use the Canary 4 Solar System telescope. Perfect for objects the size of a planet and Jupiter. And the Chile telescope as well actually gave us the best view we've had so far. But anyway, let's go back then to let's take a look at the solstice. In fact, we better take another look. I better look at the view, look at the view, look at the view. Are we going to miss it already? Oh, there it is. That was just as well. I remember just in time. There we go. There is our December solstice sun setting. So this is our Slooh Solar Telescope, this very special telescope called an Hydrogen Alpha Telescope. So we're only seeing the sunlight through an incredibly narrow band, a narrow frequency of light, which is emitted by excited hydrogen particles. And what I said to you earlier, at December solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, we get the slowest sunset. And you can see just how long it's taking. Now, normally, during the summer, it's really quick. But that's because the sun is kind of setting perpendicular to the horizon. So it's really quick to go down. But now, at December solstice, it's almost kind of skimming along the horizon. It's hitting the horizon at a very shallow angle. And that means it takes longer to disappear. It's going, it's going, it's going. I'm going to snap one more image of the December solstice sun. Look at that. Oh, and it's got that active region in it as well. Quick, everybody, make sure you get your own capture of that little moment. How cool is that? And there it is. It's the last vestige of the sun disappearing. But it's only disappeared from the solar telescope view. We've still got it. Let's hop over to our panorama view to see how we're getting on there. And we'll make sure that this is updating. In fact, what we can do is very shortly, we'll take a quick look at this, but very shortly we'll take a look at the updated animation, and you can see just how much lower the sun is getting. So already it's disappeared from view from the solar telescope. Now I'm going to go off and I'm going to close down the solar telescope, but don't go anywhere, because we're going to stick around, because we're going to watch the December solstice sunset behind Pico del Teide, the volcano which sits on top of the island of Tenerife in the Canary Islands. And this is the magical sight that astronomers, whenever we're staying at the observatory, we get to see this out of our own bedroom windows. It's the best sight in the world, I tell you. Anyway, let's listen to some music and keep watch on this sunset while I go and close the solar telescope down. We'll be right back soon. Hello and welcome back to Slooh's celebration of the December solstice. Now, those of you who have been with us for an hour and a bit, it is exactly 1 hour into astronomical winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, we've got a little treat coming up. Any Slooh members out there who have never seen the domes open, as soon as the sun sets, we've got a very special view coming up, which you'll be able to see the domes open, all 3 domes open as the sun sets. There it is. It's so bright behind the domes. It's so low, of course, just on its way to setting behind the domes. It'll soon disappear. This is a live video view. You don't normally get this from the dome cam. This is the camera that we use to monitor the domes. And as soon as the sun sets, it's safe to open up the domes for our nighttime session. Because in there are all of the telescopes that Slooh members control. Anyway, we're going to come on to that, but I did want to share with you this other illuminations post from Helen Avery. Helen is a Slooh storyteller. She's great at mythology and all manner of things when it comes to astronomy. And Helen here is talking about the return of the light, and it's something I mentioned to you a little bit earlier about the celebration that marked the winter solstice for so many cultures in the Northern Hemisphere. So if you're only able to listen to the show, I'm just going to read Helen's post now. So it's called The Return of the Light. Helen writes, why has the winter solstice, literally sun stands still, been so exalted? Because it marks the return of the light, when the sun seems to stop in the sky and then is reborn, similar to the new moon being a rebirth every month. And this is a little extract, I think, from a book by Dan First called Dance of the Moon. And he says, for ancient peoples who were not yet completely sure that there would ever be an end to the cold days that began in late September, the winter solstice was an annual miracle that assured us that life must be purposeful. Some divine force must be sustaining it, because the days become longer and life will bloom again in the spring. And Helen goes on to say, indeed, the winter solstice was perhaps more important to the ancients than the summer solstice, because they never really knew if life would indeed return and if the sun would start to become higher in the sky once again. That called for many rituals to coax the sun's rebirth and many festivities when in the days following the solstice, the sun appeared to move once again. Several sites were built specifically to measure the winter solstice. At Kintraw, for example, on Scotland's west coast, there's a prehistoric narrow flat ledge on a steep hillside that rises from a deep gorge that is thought to have been built with cairn markers to mark the point of sunset at the winter solstice. I mean, just imagine back then that you're seeing the sun get lower and lower and lower, day after day, week after week, month after month from September. Will it ever stop? Will the sun ever return? Will it ever get warm again? Will the leaves come back on the trees? Will your crops start to grow? No wonder it was a cause for celebration when they've seen the shortest day pass and the days are going to get longer. It's just something to look forward to, isn't it? Anyway, let's take a little look and see how our dome cam view is getting on. There it is. The sun's getting pretty low now. Still not safe to open those domes that contain the Slooh telescopes. Now, the way the telescopes are placed in the domes means it's actually it would be safe to open them now because none of them point towards the west when they're kind of in their resting position. So they wouldn't get direct sunlight on them in any case. But it's going to be quite cool to watch all three domes open up. It's a sight that Slooh members don't often get to see. Look at that glaring sun pummeling into Slooh's dome cam. So this is the camera that we use to monitor the observatories every day. But of course, let's take a look actually at our other, probably my favorite feed today. It's our huge panorama. And I promised you something a little earlier on, didn't I? I promised you that we would take a look at the latest animation. And there we go. Look how low the sun's getting on. So I'm going to make sure that the animation is up to date. So what we've been doing is we've been capturing images from this particular feed from the observatory panorama for the last few hours. And what we're doing is continuously making a new animation. So let's take a look at the latest to see just how low the sun is now getting. Here it comes, here it comes. Wait for it, wait for it. Oh, look at that, so close, so close. But you can see what we were talking about earlier. The reason why sunset, the moment when the first part of the sun touches the horizon to the last bit of the sun becoming invisible, dropping below the horizon, takes so long. Look at how shallow the angle is that the sun is hitting the horizon or will be hitting the horizon. So it kind of almost skims along the horizon as it sets, which means it takes longer for that sun to disappear entirely. Now, if you were to compare this to midsummer, and when the sun is hitting the horizon almost at 90 degrees perpendicular to it, it just goes straight down, and that's when the sunset is really quick. And in this particular camera, the sun during those moments is way off to the right. So summer solstice, June solstice is way off to the right, which is further north. In fact, it's to the west. That's exactly where it's going. So it's a cool view, isn't it? This one, we like this. Anyway, let's take a look back, because who knows, we may have sunset at the dome, so we can see the domes disappear. Not quite. Oh, we're close. We're so close. And then we're going to open up all three domes ready for tonight. So Slooh members out there, looks like a pretty good night. We've got a bit of cloud, haven't we? But that's only a little bit pesky. That'll maybe soon clear. So we should have a full moonless night at the Canary Islands Observatory. I know that the forecast is clear as well for Slooh's Chile Observatory in the Southern Hemisphere. That's at Catholic University Observatory outside Santiago, where you can get to see all of the summer treasures. Sorry, all of the summer treasures of the Southern Hemisphere night sky. So if you have only just joined us, then this is Slooh, and today we are celebrating the December solstice. For us here in the Northern Hemisphere, it marks the beginning of astronomical winter. Now, if you're a weatherman or a meteorologist, then you probably weren't celebrating, but you marked the beginning of winter, meteorological winter, on the 1st of December. So you can have a big argument about this in the pub or at a bar. When does winter start? But now you know, astronomical winter starts at December solstice for the Northern Hemisphere, usually on the 21st December, and then meteorological winter starts on the 1st of December. So both are right. You just have to be a little bit careful on which one you say it is. Anyway, we were watching live streams from the Canary 5 Solar Telescope. Now that telescope is online every day for Slooh members to watch. And don't forget, you snap your images in exactly the same way from that live feed as you do for the nighttime telescopes. The telescopes that we're waiting. The sun is getting so close now, isn't it, to the horizon? It's just setting behind the domes, and as soon as it sets behind the domes, we're going to open up the domes, and we'll actually get a peek inside the dome to have a look at the telescopes, because they're so big that they actually stick out the top of the domes when the domes are open. But anyway, make sure, in fact, let's hop over now, because don't forget, if you missed the beginning of the show and you haven't heard about what wassailing is, wassailing for the winter solstice, make sure you read Helen Avery's article in Slooh Illuminations. So just go to Illuminations and in there and you'll find it. But I just wanted to show you one of the last snaps I made. So I'm going to telescopes and my pictures, and this is where all of the pictures that I've snapped using Slooh's telescopes reside safely. And there you can see the last image I took just as the sun was setting, but it was one of these that I particularly liked the look of. So let's take a look at this. And right, so tomorrow, make sure you come back tomorrow and check the solar telescope when it's online, and just check out this active region, what I'm pointing to with my cursor, because that has been developing all day. It's been getting sharper and sharper, and it looks like it's about to develop a couple of sunspots. Now, I think this image is the best one that I've captured all day. So actually, while we're waiting for sunset behind the domes, I'm going to share this. So this is our December solstice sun. And you'll see where this appears in a minute. The active region developed over the course of the day. I'm going to save that. I usually put a couple of little tags in here as well. And tags means I can search for these images. So any feature that's visible on the sun when I snap an image, there's a filament there as well, that long straight line. I always add those as tags, and that means I can search through very easily all of my solar images which have one of those phenomena in them. So anyway, I've saved that. I'm going to add that to my solar gallery, the best of Slooh Solar Telescope. So I've done that, but I also want to share this on the home page as well. I wasn't setting out to do a little how-to, but this is how simple it is, because we've given over one of the biggest parts of Slooh's homepage to members. So we want you to share your very best images, but also always make sure you share why that particular moment counted and why it was special. So I'm going to share that just like any member can do, and we'll hop over to the Slooh homepage now, and we'll see what we call the member photo timeline. And there you can see actually Jay has shared that setting sun, and I like that one, Jay. Maybe a bit more of a solstice sunset. Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, let's take a look, because mine was taken just before that, so it should be appearing here. No, Jay's done another one just at the beginning. Nice capture, Jay. Nice capture. And there's my one there. So this is on the Slooh homepage. So Slooh members, help us, fill up the member photo timeline. It goes all the way back to the beginning of Slooh, back in, how long ago? 2003, 2004 this goes back to. How cool is that? Early image by Slooh's founder Michael Pellucci there. Nice one. That's the Pleiades star cluster. They're looking really good at the moment, but we're not here to talk about the stars today. We're here to talk about the sun. Now let's take a look. How is that sunset going on? Yeah, it's kind of getting there. So I think we ought to take a look at some of the other feeds. How is our big panorama doing at the moment? So this is the sun. This is a panorama that spreads over the entire observatory site. So the observatory is at an altitude of 8,000 feet, high on top of a volcano, because the Canary Islands are all volcanic islands, just like Hawaii. And this particular kind of photo montage, this panorama, shows us a full 360 degrees around the observatory site. And there you can see the enormous domes of the professional telescopes there. The big dome there is called the OGS, the Optical Ground Station. Now, sometimes you'll see in the Slooh All-Sky camera a green laser firing across the sky, and that's the telescope that this is coming from. Now, a lot of people assume that that's what's called adaptive optics, but it's not. What they're usually doing out of that telescope is communicating with satellites, orbiting satellites using lasers. It's called quantum cryptology, and it's a remarkable piece of technology. And I often meet the team there who've been working on that, mainly from Switzerland. Most of the team are from Switzerland, and they were able to share with me quite a lot of the information. But if you ever see a green light shooting across the all-sky camera when you're watching live streams from the telescopes, then that's probably what it is. It's probably the Optical Ground Station. It's the European Space Agency, actually. So it's the European Space Agency Optical Ground Station firing their quantum cryptology laser into the sky. It's quite cool, isn't it? So anyway, let's take another look back at, see how we're getting on with, we're getting closer and closer to sunset. This is a live video stream from our dome cam. You see there, it's just getting caught behind a little bit of cloud now, but I reckon another 5 minutes and we're going to see this out. We're going to see this out to the end to watch sunset behind the Slooh domes, and we'll open up the domes ready for Slooh members to control the telescopes tonight. So anyway, let's take another little short break. I'll hop off and I'll find some another maybe piece of poetry or another short story to tell you. So don't go anywhere, because in fact, shall we go? No, I think we should stay looking at this. It's going, isn't it? The sun is starting to set just behind the bushes. So for those people who haven't seen the Slooh Observatory before, we've got 3 domes there. The one in the middle is the Canary 1 dome. That houses the half-meter telescope that Slooh members control every night. A half-meter telescope with this research-grade CCD camera on the back of it. Oh, it's a lovely instrument. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the Canary 2 dome, and that one contains 2 telescopes, one very similar, not quite as large. So half meter, by the way, is 20 inches, but there's also a 17-inch telescope. That's the diameter of its primary mirror. There's our December solstice sun just setting behind the bush. Is it still going? Is it still going? It's still there, isn't it? Just a tiny bit of it. There it goes. Anyway, there's a 17-inch telescope in the Canary 2 dome. And then the dome to the left, we've got 3 telescopes. That's where the Slooh Solar Telescope is, which is where we were watching live feeds of the sun in hydrogen alpha light. And it's also got 2 other telescopes in there. It's got the Canary 3 Deep Sky Telescope, which is perfect for really large galaxies or nebulae. And then we've got the Canary 4 Solar System Telescope, which is superb for planets, planetary nebulae, and other smaller, brighter objects. There goes the sun. Now, if you're able to go outside and watch the slow sunset of the December solstice, wherever you are, if you've got a clear skies tonight, make sure you get a really clear western horizon, and you'll see just how much longer it takes for the sun to set, because it's hitting the horizon at a shallow angle, so it takes longer to disappear entirely. Look at that, you can see it glimmering, can't you, through the bushes there. That's a great sight. We've never seen that live before. So this is our dome cam, and this is live video coming in. Just going to watch the domes open. But that's cool. I like that. Shall we open the domes, folks? Shall we open the domes? Which one should we open first? Should we take a vote on it? I think we'll open Canary 1 first, which houses the half-meter telescope. So keep your eyes peeled. Here it goes. And there it goes. One side opens first, and then the other side. And then sticking out of the top, you'll see just how enormous this telescope is. I mean, you could fit a small child. Actually, you could fit a fairly large child inside that telescope as we watch the dome open. How cool is that? Just see the sunlight still glistening through the bushes. Now you can see a building behind that big black blob, which is the half-meter telescope. That building in the background is called the Residencia, and that's where all of the astronomers stay whenever they go to the Slooh Observatory. But you don't need to go to the Slooh Observatory, because you can control these telescopes from the comfort of your own armchair. I'm sitting in my office chair at the moment, and I'm able to control these domes. That's quite cool, isn't it? Let's do dome 2 next, and that's the dome on the right. So let's open dome 2. Now, the reason why we open the domes, there it goes. The reason why we open the domes as soon as the sun sets is because we want all of the equipment to cool down. Even though the sun has been at its lowest today, the day's been short, the sun hasn't been hot because it's been so low, we still want any of the heat that's built up in the equipment or the domes themselves to dissipate before we start observing in an hour or two's time. Otherwise, it kind of creates all of this thermal wakes in the images, and it makes the images wobble a little bit. So look, we just see the sun. I don't know if you can see this, but we're still seeing the sun just glinting through the bushes. So what do you say then we open up the last of the Slooh domes in the Canary Islands? So this is going to be dome 3 that houses 3 telescopes. So let's open that up as well. This is a first. I don't think Slooh members have ever seen the telescopes open live like this in our dome cam. There it goes. You can see how the shutter opens. Quite cool, isn't it? So there you go. All 3 domes are now open and ready for business tonight, folks. So what have you all scheduled tonight on the telescopes? I know I've seen some Neptune and Uranus missions there. I've seen some Horsehead Nebula missions for later on, because the constellation of Orion rises quite early. But I was actually telling you something. If you've got a clear horizon tonight, after the sun sets locally where you are, just look up slightly above where the sun was and off to the left. So you're still looking in the western sky, and you should see the incredibly thin crescent moon. And if you've got those clear western horizons, it will look spectacular. There's nothing better than seeing an incredibly young moon. Always looks terrific just after sunset. So we're getting a bit of sky showing up here now. We might have actually Another view that I can give you here, which is always good. It's a good one to see. Do excuse me one moment. Bit of a chilled show today we're having, quite deliberate. That's what we wanted for December solstice. So let's just take a look at this. This is one of my favorite camera views that we've got. So this is our Pico del Teide cam, and it's staring down. So this is on top of the 12,000 foot high volcano, and you can see over here where I'm pointing, that's actually the shadow of Pico del Teide now falling over the rest of the island. The observatory itself is at 8,000 feet, and that's here on this ridge. You can just see the little white buildings. Those are the domes that we've been looking at in the other camera. And here we can see the sun setting behind the domes. So when that shadow reaches the observatory, that's when everything starts falling into darkness. So this is a great view, isn't it? You can see we're above the clouds today as well, which is pretty cool. But if you keep an eye on this, this is also, you can see this on the telescope pages. So if you go to any of the Canary Islands telescope pages and you scroll down the page, this is what we call our horizon cam, and you can see that image here. So you can check the conditions yourself every night. You can also check out the dome cam. You can check out the all sky camera as well. You can see there showing the domes all open. This is looking like a good night. Those clouds look like they're disappearing. But let's take a look at the one last feed that we're waiting for, because we want to see the sun setting behind Pico del Teide. And we are just about there from the observatory site. So let's keep our eyes peeled on that one. Looks pretty cool, doesn't it? What a great day this has been. December solstice. The days are going to get longer. Nights are going to get shorter. That's bad for astronomers. But if you're a Slooh member, it kind of doesn't matter, because the Canary Islands nights might be getting shorter, but the chilly nights at the Chile Observatory, well, those are getting longer. And of course, down there it marks the beginning of the best time of year weather-wise, because today in the Southern Hemisphere, the December solstice has marked the first day of astronomical summer. So, you know, it all kind of balances out, doesn't it? So let's take another look back here. Oh, that shadow is creeping up. We're soon going to be in the shadow. Well, listen, I hope you've kind of enjoyed our little celebration of December solstice today. If you've snapped any good pics, then make sure you share them in the discussion boards and stuff like that. So, Emmanuel always has something good to share. Emmanuel has actually discovered several novae and supernovae with Slooh's telescopes, which is quite cool. And whenever you see a post from him, he's always reporting something interesting. So what's this, Emmanuel? What have you got for us? A star last night in M31. That's the Andromeda Galaxy, the very galaxy we were talking about a bit earlier. At first glance, I thought it was a nova, but before being too excited, I collected more images and got a bit surprised when I realized it was fading quickly, 3 magnitudes fainter in just 1 hour. That could not be a classical nova. So I didn't submit the discovery immediately. After some research on CDS, I found 2 novae at that exact location that were reported in 1966 and 1968. In the 60s, astronomers couldn't get a spectrum of every object they discovered, and some were announced as novae or supernova, even though they weren't. And that was the case for those 2. Many years later, they were thought to be 2 outbursts of recurring dwarf nova, but the time between 2 outbursts, 2 years and nothing since, was still unusual. 1 month ago, a team led by A.W. Shafter, an astronomer with whom Emmanuel has already talked about his discoveries, has studied the progenitor star, that's the original star, of this transient, regretting that it had not exploded since 50 years. They made a spectrum of the suspected star, magnitude 20.3 star, and on December 13th last week, they published a paper explaining that this transient was indeed a flaring star in front of M31, so in our galaxy, the Milky Way, and not a dwarf nova. How cool is that? So keep an eye on that post. I was just going to say keep an eye open in all of the discussion boards, because there's always something interesting going on. Oh, we had another member, Kim. She recovered a comet. So this is a returning comet, Comet 37P, and she's the first person to spot it as it comes back in to our solar system in its orbit around the sun. Well done, Kim. Great recovery there. Now let's take a look back, see where we are. Dome cam still looking good. Skies are looking great tonight. And here we are. Let's see how much closer that's getting. Well, that's it. So I think I'm going to leave you with some of the live feeds with a little bit of music. If you've got, we've got loads coming up actually. Let's take a look at the website again. Because we've got some great live casts coming up. So we've done today Star of Bethlehem. Now you may have read that there's all kinds of theories of what the object was, the supposed object that the three wise men followed, the Star of Bethlehem. And Dr. Paige Godfrey, Slooh astronomer Dr. Paige Godfrey, is going to be talking to us on Christmas Eve with live feeds to tell us about some of the objects that it could have been. Was it a supernova? Was it a planetary conjunction? Was it a comet? Who knows? Paige is going to tell us. So don't miss that. That's on Sunday, Christmas Eve, the Star of Bethlehem. Then on New Year's Day, it's actually on the night of the 1st, we've got the New Year's supermoon. And this is the second of 3 supermoons. But amazingly, it's the largest supermoon of 2018. So that's quite good, isn't it? That's a great way of starting the year. And then, of course, we're going to pick up in January after the Christmas holidays. We'll have Paige Godfrey's Intro to Astronomy course. That's going to be starting again in January. We'll have Helen Avery. She'll be coming back to do her series of constellation stories. Now, if you haven't seen those, you need to make sure, if you're a member, you can hop off to Livecast, browse Livecast like this, and I just want to make sure you're saying that. Yes, you are. And you can look at any of our recent shows that we've done. So if you have missed any of Paige's, Helen's, or my own, or some of our bigger shows, maybe like the Geminids were, then you can go back and you can catch up on some of those. But do make sure that you catch Dr. Godfrey's Intro to Astronomy course, and do not miss on Sundays Helen Avery's constellation stories. It's the best way of learning the night sky, to learn about the constellations. And of course, I'm going to be coming back as well to continue our practical astronomy, talking about how to use the Slooh telescopes. And if you've got any questions, you can always ask them in the discussion boards about your own telescopes and stuff like that. If you've got any problems, do kind of a bit of a scope doctor. And also every week, every Sunday, we do a What's Up This Week, which helps you use the telescopes for the best objects. Now, what have we got this week? Let's hop off to telescopes, reserve telescopes, and we'll see Slooh recommends. These are the objects that we're recommending. Now, watch the moon grow to new supermoons. So from tomorrow night on, we'll be able to see it from the Canary Islands Observatory. You can see this from your own backyard, but it's a great time to capture all of the lunar phases. So you can set up a mission every single night to capture the crescent moon in Slooh's telescopes. Horsehead Nebula, that's a great one to see at the moment with moonless skies. You need clear skies and moonless skies to capture the Horsehead Nebula, the Tarantula Nebula, and then a few other nebulae as well, and the Andromeda Galaxy, which is what Emmanuel was talking about earlier. So anyway, lots to look forward to in the new year. We got some special news as well coming up in the new year, but I hope you've kind of enjoyed this kind of chilled out afternoon with us to celebrate the December solstice. Start of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, summer down in the Southern Hemisphere. So it's time for us all to start migrating southward, I guess. Anyway, we will carry on and we'll watch that sunset over the next few minutes. I hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast. I'm Paul Cox. This has been Slooh. Bye for now.